Hey Fives folks, today's session is about coaching anaerobic threshold. So while it may not be the sexiest of topics, it's definitely one of the most important and also one of the most challenging things to coach. So why is that? Well, a couple of reasons. First, as instructors, especially new instructors, we might not fully understand threshold, and we might not be sure which threshold is someone even referencing. Is it aerobic? Is it lactate? Is it functional? Or is it anaerobic? So today we're going to keep it simple, and what is useful for the broadest audience can address anaerobic threshold. That's the place where your body's energy system, the point at which it crosses over from aerobic, where you're primarily using fat for fuel, to anaerobic, where your body starts to use more of glycogen or carbs to fuel your effort. That's what we're going to address. Another reason that this can be so challenging to coach and cue on is you're never really sure how interested are your riders in the science behind the ride. So you want to be careful to not add too much, but also not too little, because it can be interesting and really help riders understand why they're doing what they're doing. So again, we're going to share 3 tips for coaching anaerobic threshold for the broadest audience possible. So Pam's going to lead us off with tip number 1.
Yeah, and I think the first thing is to identify, let's just really define like what is anaerobic threshold, just so everybody's kind of on the same page. And addressing that for visual learners is probably really helpful.
Yeah.
So if you think of threshold as a point, like Karen was saying, it's a point that must be crossed to experience something different, or to enter into, to something that is different than what you're currently feeling.
Yep.
So physiologically, that's described as a point that has to be exceeded in order to produce a given response or result.
Yep.
So the easiest way to think of threshold is literally everyone knows what a threshold is on a doorway. On one side of the door, you have one set of conditions. When you walk through that door, you're in a different space.
Yep.
So anaerobic threshold is literally the, kind of the line right there in the doorway. And when we're riding, we do a very similar thing. So if you're on one side of threshold, that's when you're burning primarily fat for fuel. It's manageable, it's sustainable, but when you cross over threshold, it's much harder, right? Anaerobically, that's where you're burning primarily carbohydrate for fuel, and you're getting a totally different experience. So the line between is really where we identify that anything below that, the further back you step from that, that's your lower training zones, and then anything over that, the further forward you go, are your higher training zones. So I think that visual is helpful.
Yeah, I love it.
People to see.
Love it. So, fantastic. Tip number 2. So that was visual, and we get into verbal. So coaching threshold in language that resonates with your rider's goals can be very helpful. So if you use words like fat and carbs to help differentiate for your riders which side of threshold they're on, that can be very powerful. So imagine using language when you're coaching that is like, today we're going to burn fat for 40 minutes. Are you in? I doubt anyone's going to be like, no, I would like to keep this fat for the entire ride, right? So that can be really motivating, because so many of our riders are riding to lose weight, right? Another way that you can coach it, you could say something like, today we're going to burn fat in the flats and carbs to climb. Pam loves that one.
I do like that one.
Yeah. Feel free to
stealing
use
that one.
Stealing that one? So another one could be, we're going to burn low and slow, then fast and hot. 2 different systems, 2 different fuels. So something like that. And this can be especially helpful with those riders in your class who come in, and regardless of your profile, they go 100% the entire class, or as long as they can, because they think that's how they're going to optimize their time in the saddle. They think, I'm going to spend this class burning as many calories as possible. So use language that resonates with their goals to help educate them.
Yeah. And we understand you're always burning a mixture of fuels, like we get that. But primarily, the aerobic zones burning up fuel. Fat and flats, carbs and climbs.
Fat and flats.
I'm feeling alright, come on.
Oh, for sure.
So I think tip number 3 is to actually have, more descriptors around those kinesthetic learners.
Yep.
And obviously, if we're rating a perceived exertion chart, if you teach in a facility that has spin power zones or an RPE chart, it's actually ideal. There's a ton of science behind the RPE chart. It's real. If you don't have one, maybe you can get out on the web and find one. There's really cute ones with emoticons, like someone crying.
For like zone 10.
Yeah, starts with a happy face, ends with kind of an angry face. But everyone knows, so on that RPE, you can give a verbal that gives them the feeling of walk, jog, run, sprint. Walk is aerobic, a jog is still aerobic, it's moderate to sort of hard. A run is pretty much threshold. And then of course a sprint is anaerobic. Most people know what it feels like to walk, jog, run, or sprint.
Yeah, perfect.
That's your zones right there. And then also breath. That's a powerful indicator of when people crossed over. Different fuels, different muscle fibers, types and stuff. When they've crossed over threshold, their breath is labored. You can hear them breathe. It becomes audible. It's harder to have a long, steady, smooth breath. So ventilatory threshold is also something that has a lot of science behind it.
Fantastic. So they are our 3 tips. So to summarize, use visualization so they can see it. Use language that resonates with them so they can hear it. And then use a combination of visual and language so that they can feel it. There is so much information out there on threshold. Go out, have fun with it. Thanks so much for tuning in to 5 Spokes. And as always,
Stay
awesome.
awesome.